Good morning, and thank you to whoever clicked on this video and is watching it. I do hope you share it because what I'm about to teach you is one of the very few pillars on which this nation could remain standing. That is, this is one of the few things that we can spread as far as the truth that will set you free goes that might actually do some good. That might actually stop the divide and conquer that is taking place here. And, you know, sounds kind of important to me, so I guess I'll fucking get on with it. And please feel free to share this video with any Christian conservatives, rednecks, or otherwise, because what I'm about to tell you is stuff that they should already know, but apparently have forgotten because from the pundits to Fox News to the churches have failed you. And it starts with the building blocks. It starts with those networked lazy lessons. Yeah, did you know that your pastor doesn't think of his lesson plans anymore? Hadn't been for a while. They got these big networks of churches. They pass out all the materials, and every different church gets their own little template, and they get to print out everything based on these little questionnaire things, all in little questionnaires. You go to a different church in a different city, chances are you're going to find the same kind of little questionnaires. Oh, why is that? Every church thinks of their own different questionnaires? Nope. They have meetings, they have conferences. I forget what it's called, the name of this association, but I was familiarized with it when I was in a band at a church and hung out with the pastor, Tim Liston, and the choir director a lot. Tim Liston's a great preacher. If you can see his, he gives a sermon on here on YouTube, the Song of Solomon. Brilliant. Anyways, let's see here. So, I don't have a prompter or notes or anything. I have a paused TV on stupid Morning Joe and some guy looking constipated on the right and Donald Trump on the left looking like he's making kind of a sound. And over here I got my fish tanks. So if you see me staring off in this way, it's because my freaking fish tanks are awesome. Fish tanks. Okay. Anyways. So, all right. I'm just trying to go back through what I was just saying. Kind of listen to the churches, the pamphlets, and pudding pops. Here's the deal. Since about the 1800s, okay, at least as far back as 1845, you can see it start to happen where different sorts of experts and people with artifacts and scrolls and all kinds of different stuff started coming to America and talking to different little church groups here and there and sowing seeds of deceit. Now, before I get too far into it and start sounding like something maybe some, especially right wing people, have heard, before you get led astray by Satan himself, you need to realize one thing. If Jesus said, beware of those who say they are Jews and are not, that would imply that there are real Jews too. Okay? And did Jesus tell you you had to be aware of them? No. So let's get this very clear. There are two types of Jews. In fact, technically, you could look at it like there's three types. I'll get into that in a second. Okay? There are false Jews. That is basically like fucking goblin men from Russia. Okay? That intermingled with real Jews and called themselves Polish. Okay? There are many real Jews and even interbreds, Persian, many different looks of Jews. I'm still saying Jews, of Hebrews, and later converted and married into an interbred tribes that became real Hebrews, that lived like real Hebrews in parts of Russia. Okay. And I'm talking from like Gorka, Grozny, like all the way through Khorasan. Like this whole area used to have a lot of the words Persiatic Hebrews comes to mind. Bear in mind, okay, if you're watching my videos for the first time, I am a reincarnated being, and I have been studying this shit in multiple lifetimes. Okay, so I know more than you can imagine, but I've forgotten more than you could ever learn. Yeah. And I like to constantly make fun of myself by acting like a moron. Yeah. So, yeah, guess that's enough of those disclaimers for now. So, to get back to specifically the two types of Jews, basically you have false Jews, many people that are, like that are known as Jews, and that's just, oh, I'm a Jew. Okay? And many people say that they won't say that they're Jews, but they'll speak in front of Jews and say, oh, I'm one of you, don't worry. Okay? But they'll never actually say it. They'll never actually profess their faith in God. So you have real Jews, but real Jews, like Jew. Where does the word Jew come from to begin with? Well, it's Jude, Judah. Okay, not from Judea. Okay, which actually not named for the Hebrews as a whole, but named for a tribe that was dominant at the time. Okay, that's the tribe of Judah. So while I was taught, and many of you were taught, I'm sure, in Sunday school, that Hebrew and Jew were just different words for the same thing. In fact, they are different. Hebrew is the entire group of people, and Jew is one of the families. Tribe of Judah. Okay, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. But, and this is a big but, there, and that's specifically the Pharisees, was it this? No. Referred to now as the Sadducees. But they conspired together anyways. So Whichever one of those two was the tribe of Judah. It's easy to flip stuff over. Get stuff backwards. Such similar words now. What if there's a reason for that? Pharisees and Sadducees. Oh, those are kind of like together, and you just kind of write it off, and you don't really wonder much about it. Huh? So those, basically, their rulers, their dynastic rulers, not quite kings, but their dynastic rulers, had kind of missed the captivity in their own way and wanted the prosperity back at the cost of their souls, and it was one of the reasons why they betrayed the Messiah. So you have one tribe of many, quote, Jews. Most of the people that you call Jews are actually just Hebrews of various different tribes, okay? And thus deserve no form of fucking racial bigotry. It's like ridiculous and it's unchristian of you. But it was a select family that led very few people back into where they were once captive for, financial gain. And after that, the reason why so many Jews wound up in Russia is because of the Islamic conquests. Okay? And this is something that happened kind of while the First Khanate and the Arabs were at war, and then alliances were forming. And then you had the rise of Tamerlane, and by then, any Jew or Christian had to get the fuck out. And Europe and, the entire Middle East were at war. And Europe and the Mongolian horde, there was, vast swath of burned and salted land between like the Volga and the Urals. I mean, there's everything out that way. It was just one big desolate war zone. I mean, most people would fear like the spirits of all the dead people, and like that would be like why you wouldn't go out in that way. But along the Caucasus and along the north port of the Black Sea and Crimea and everywhere bordering kind of where the separatists are right now in East Ukraine, that was settled by people who were escaping. Okay. And we're talking 1,000 years ago. Subsequent to this, a lot of those people were then enslaved or wiped out. And many of them, entire groups of them, in fact, would be herded up, rounded up, and taken far back into Horde territory and basically set up as a little breeding program so that they could be reintroduced post-conflict at a later time to cause, post-physical invasion, like a migrant type invasion or political or cultural type invasion. So, where am I going with all this? Bear with me, because you have to understand the background of this to understand what's happening now. There is no map for where we are today. You understand? So the only way you can know where you are right now is to turn around and look and see where those footsteps actually were. Okay, so that's what you need to do right now. Now, between 1,000 years ago and 500 years ago was when all this was happening. And by about the late 1400s, which should sound like a familiar time to Americans, 1492. By the late 1400s, essentially the Horde and the Islamic Caliphate had become one. And remember, when I'm talking about the Horde, I'm talking about most of Russia. If I talk about the Russian people, the good Russian people, like the real Russian people, I'm usually talking about Kievan Rus, okay, which is now Ukraine. It's not even called Russia anymore. It's confusing, I know. What you now know as the Russian people are those Jews and Slavic people, those other Europeans that were kidnapped between this time period of 1,000 years ago and 500 years ago. And to understand exactly why their gene pool is so diverse, why they have such a wonderful selection of people to choose from to go invade various countries, you need to understand how far into Europe the combined Islamic Caliphate, Mongolian, Eastern, that's what it is. It's just the Eastern Horde. Okay? It's the Horde of Horus. This is a much more ancient battle than you realize. And as Christians, which I assume people who are saying that they're conservative are supposed to be, right? You're supposed to be a Christian or a Hebrew. Either way, you're supposed to understand that God is in control and that you need to understand what God wants of you and expects of you in order to be prepared for what you have to do now. And how else can you be prepared without knowledge? This is a spiritual battle. This is an existential, definitive time that your soul faces. Stop thinking about your wallets. They mean nothing. Think about your souls, because they're in danger. Much more danger than my lungs. So, by the mid 1500s, which is when our pragmatic version of his story kind of begins. Do you know how far the Horde had pushed into Europe. Do you know? Because without this information, you cannot make a decision on anything today. It connects that directly back in time 500 years. Back to the late 1400s, all the way to about 1563. 420 years before my soul woke up into this body. About. It was 1561. That is the last thing that I found recorded that I remember from my previous life. And in 1561, the Horde was attacking Nuremberg, Germany. They didn't attack it with ground troops. They attacked it in airships. Airships. Okay? Dirigibles. Then they attacked Vienna by land. Okay, so you know where these places are in Europe? You picture your map of Europe. Now, right in the middle. That's where these places are. Germany, Hungary. It's funny how it should be Germany and Austria-Hungary that should be the most contested area for centuries to come. It's funny how that center dividing line in Europe seems to be the axis of cultural upheaval even to this day. Was there ever any separation? That's the question. Between the Chechens, the Georgians, who in Roman times would have been called the Gorgonians, or the sons of Medusa, they were the ones